Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm David. Today I'm going to be weathering my Hornby W4 Peckett and adding a few details and extra bits and bobs. I'm going to see if it can go from this to this. Okay, so I've already DCC fitted my Peckett. For those of you who don't know how to do it, the instructions are really clear. And yeah, it's one of the easier DCC installs that I've done. You simply remove all the screws from the bottom that are labelled in the instructions, and you need a very specific decoder, the name of which will be on the screen here. And it just slides into a little bracket inside the Peckett. It's quite a nice fit actually. So yeah. There's a photo there of when I did mine. I did intend to make a video on it, but I actually never got round to editing a proper video together before my break. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today, as hopefully you've seen there if it goes well, I'm going to be weathering and detailing the loco. So I've got some footplate crew to fit as well, which I think I've shown you in a previous video, but we'll be looking at how I install those later. Maybe add a tiny bit of coal inside. But also the main thing here is a lot of weathering. So we're going to go over to a workbench and we'll get a crack at dirtying this up. Okay then, so I'm over at the workbench now, and yeah, as usual I'm just going to be making this up as I go along really. So the plan is to make it sort of look like a worn industrial loco. Bearing in mind though, a lot of industrial locos were quite well looked after, so they'd have a lot of grease and grime, but you'd see sort of the main bits of the saddle tank here would probably be wiped down with a rag in the morning before they started shunting. So yeah, what we're aiming for is generally clean, but in lots of patches of dirt all around the edges. Then I might, depending how it goes, it might end up being slightly darker weathered. Yeah, depending what look I go for in the end, seeing how things go. Okay then, so hopefully the camera angle's alright for this video. If not, it's going to be rather boring for you guys. So yeah, what I'm going to be using today is a mix of the airbrush. So I know a lot of people don't have airbrushes, and often they prefer videos where you sort of use paintbrushes and dry brushing and things like that. I've got one. It's going to be a lot easier for me to just use it quickly. So I shall use it. The airbrush in question, for those who might be wondering, this is just a cheap airbrush from Amazon. The brush itself, about 20 quid. The compressor, maybe another 20 quid. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, nothing fancy at all. So it can be done on the cheap. I won't just be using the airbrush though. I will be using some pan pastels. They're artist pan pastels, which is basically exactly the same as weathering powders, like you can get from Humbrol. And then yeah, I might use some other techniques later on. We'll see what happens. So starting with a completely plain logo here, I'm just going to grab some Vallejo Dark Earth, which is a sort of nice dark grey-brown colour, and I'm just going to give a light mist, a sort of general weathering, and then we're going to start working on removing some of the weathering to make it look like the loco has been cleaned. And then we're going to keep doing that in a cycle. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to come along. Obviously I won't be able to wipe properly in all the little details, so what that means is we'll be left with quite a nice finish, because obviously I'll only be able to wipe where the people will be able to clean in real life. So it's going for nice up and down. Make sure the nameplate's nice and clean. I'd imagine the shunters would be quite proud of the loco, so they might wipe the nameplate before they use it. Okay, so now I've done it for that side. I'm going to keep working my way around. We'll do the opposite side, and then we'll move on to something else. Okay, so I'm actually quite happy with how that's turned out so far. Again, we've just got the base coat on here, so it's a tiny bit brown, and then I've just gone around and wiped it off as best as I can. So yeah, it's looking alright. We've got some nice streaking going on. Again, just a damp cotton bud. No need for thinners or anything. You even use a dry cotton bud. We're just wiping, and wherever the dirt sticks is pretty much where it'd be left if someone had gone around with a wet rag and cleaned the loco. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break out some weathering powders. So we'll make sure this is dry first, and then I'm going to get some weathering powders out, and we can start with those. Okay, so that's a little bit more dry now. So what I've got here, as I said, they're artists' pan pastels. Exactly the same as weathering powders. It's just powdered pastel in a little tub, and you get a nice dry soft brush. And I'm just going to get some black here, sort of like soot. We can work around the chimney for a second. Go for a nice brown here, so I've just got a sort of tan brown colour. Very, very happy with that. What we're going to do now is just on some of the areas, very, very, very carefully, we've got a bit of this nice brown here. Oh, where's the camera? There we are, a bit of nice brown. So we're going to add some details of rust. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we'll stop the weathering for a little bit, and we're going to try and get the two figures into the cab, and then any touch-ups that are needed can be done, and then we'll get it sealed. Okay then, so we're going to fit these figures. These are from Hardy's Hobbies. They're specifically for the Hornby W4 Peckett. Really nice little figures, very, very highly detailed. I painted those up a few weeks ago, and they've been sat in a bag waiting ever since. Now, I have been hoping to get this back wall of the cab off. I'm pretty sure it's possible. I feel like I've seen it done in a photograph before, but I can't see a way of doing it without breaking some glue, and I really don't want to do that at the moment. So I'm going to try it first. It's just using these tweezers to place the driver and the fireman inside the cab. So we're going to try and go in through the open cab window. That's not gone too bad, not too shabby. Okay, so this is a real struggle, but I've just about got the fireman where I want him. So what I've done, tiny blob of super glue on a plank of wood here. Sorry, it's not in focus. I'm just going to get a needle, just get the smallest amount of super glue. Okay, so that was a real faff. So I've got the driver in here, he's leaning over the side, that's super glued in, and then you might be able to see, possibly not, I assure you there is a fireman in there shoveling coal from the mini coal bunker that's inside. So yeah, I'm really happy with it so far. A couple of finishing touches though I feel are needed. I had hoped to add some coal to the bunker, but as you really can't see it, I won't be doing that. The nameplates for now, I will leave those be. They say forest number 1. Until I think of another name, I'm going to leave those, and then I'll have to find a supplier. I had a look before. There are several out there, several very good ones, but they've got quite a long lead time. So it certainly won't be happening in this video, but it might happen in a future video. Okay, so some final touches then. None of the weathering got really too scuffed there when I was doing the figures, but I think I'll add a few more streaks. So we've got some light grey. I'll show you this is light grey, not white. We've got white powder here, and this is a light grey. And I'm going to add some water streaking around some of the whistles and the dome and things like that. So we'll get a fine paintbrush and just add a couple of streaks. Okay, one last thing then is the buffers. These are some nice metal buffers. So what I'm just going to do, get a cotton bud. Don't want too much paint on it. Just a bit of matte black paint. I'm going to come round to the buffer stops. Okay then, the one final step, technically two final steps, is going to be to seal in all of the work we've done. So we've used lots of powders as well as acrylic paints. All of those can rub off easily when handled. So what we're going to do, we've got some matte varnish. This is MIG Matte Lucky Varnish. They do have a super matte, which I might invest in the future. This is just their normal matte. It's really, really nice. It goes on straight through the airbrush. Again, if you don't have an airbrush, you can get Humbrol rattle cans. They do matte varnish and rattle cans. And all we're going to do is just mist gently over the whole thing. Not too much of a thick coat. So. Okay then, so I am so happy with the results there. We used some basic brown airbrushing to begin with, just a really light coat, a mist of brown, which will then wipe most of it off with a cotton bud. Went along with some black powder, followed by a tiny bit of brown for some frame dirt, as well as a little bit of rust on the roof. Then fitted the figures. It was really, really fiddly. They're Hardy's Hobbies figures, actually designed for the Peckett W4. And then finally a few touch-ups. So we've got the grey around the sort of where there'd be water leaking, and some black on the buffers. I'm really, really happy with that. One final step then. So we did the matte varnish, and the final thing I've done off camera is clean the pickups and wheels again. And now we can set her off.